here's an interesting thing that I discovered a few months ago. In Assassin's Creed Black Flag, you have exactly the same mechanism to kill sharks. Alright, in the past few weeks after the release of first Resident Evil 4 Remake trailer, there were so many rumors and leaks and so many news about this game that I thought with myself that maybe one day I should just watch them all one by one. And today is the day. So without killing time, let's just start doing it. With the first one saying, these new Resident Evil 4 Remake leaks will shock you. Okay, shock me.
Alright, so a few days ago, a Twitter user approached me claiming that they had information about the RE4 Remake, so they sent me a document to check out, which was listed on 4chan. In the document, the leaker starts off by saying that they have knowledge of the RE4 Remake builds from 2018 from a friend of theirs who have been playtesting the game and taking feedback surveys. From there, the document gets right into the leaks, starting with changes / removed enemies and bosses. First off, it states that Leon will encounter the Bella sisters during the mine segment of the game, and they will be led by a mutated Dr. Salvador. As for Dr. Salvador, he will be a reoccurring boss up until the mine area. Each time he is defeated, he will mutate further and further, with his final form looking very similar to the chainsaw guy from the Waterworld Mercenaries map. As for Dr. Salvador, this is exactly what I wanted to see out of him, and the fact that he's going to be defeated multiple times tells me that he will most likely be a stalker type enemy if true. Next up, it states that the Del Lago.
Alright, so Dr. Salvador being a stalker enemy sounds like a really interesting idea. Like, it scares the shit out of us that Dr. Salvador can chase you throughout the village and mutates after each time you defeat it. Because back in 2005, when the original game came out, they had so many Dr. Salvadors in the game and all of them used the same 3D model, which was really lame to me. But right now, having only one Dr. Salvador which changes form after each time you defeat it sounds like a really good idea to me. Especially now that he's a stalker and it's gonna be a pain in the butt.
Boss fight plays almost exactly like the original, but in this game, the spears you throw at it are limited. Then it states that Chief Men...
Okay. About the Lago, it's interesting to have it back. And I think it's not going to be one of the boss fights that Capcom is going to skip in this game. Because of that picture of Leon we saw on the trailer that he was sleeping in a boat. And I think that's after or maybe before. It has to be after the Lago boss fight. And here's an interesting thing that I discovered a few months ago. I was playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And I realized Capcom also copied the Lago fight of Resident Evil 4 game in Assassin's Creed Black Flag game. Which in Assassin's Creed Black Flag you have exactly the same mechanism to kill sharks, and the last boss fight of those sharks is actually Moby Dick. If you have read the novel, you know what I'm talking about. According to these rumors, this time we're gonna have a limited amount of spheres. It's not gonna be like infinite spheres in the boat, which kind of makes sense to me. Okay, let's go to the next part.
Mendez will play somewhat of a stalker type role, but he won't really appear that often. His home has been expanded upon and he will chase the player throughout it. Mendez will grab nearby enemies and push them towards the player while cursing at them in their native language, stating stuff like this and this. From there, it states that there will only be 2 Garradors in the game. They won't die, instead they will just get knocked out when defeated in each area until the end of the castle segment. U3 has been completely
Alright, so Garradors not dying and just getting knocked out. I can't say it makes sense to me or doesn't make sense to me, because it's kind of like Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 Remake. He doesn't die until at the end of the game. Of course, you have to shoot a rocket to him, but he doesn't die. Doesn't matter how much ammo you waste on him. Even if you get a infinite machine gun and you shoot him for like 10 hours, he's not gonna die. He's just a stalker enemy of Resident Evil 2 Remake. And it seems the Garrador enemy is gonna be like that. So we never get the chance to kill them. We just have to escape the castle to be away from them. Sounds... I can't say it sounds interesting, but sounds something new. I mean, it's something that it's a new experience.
Redesigned, and there will be changes to its encounter. It will be very similar to the baby in Resident Evil 8, where the player must solve a small puzzle to escape a very dark area before moving to a bigger space to battle it. The area contains a lot of nitrogen containers to slow it down, so this actually sounds really good. I loved what they did with the baby in Resident Evil Village. It was a very terrifying experience to endure, and with U3 being much more aggressive than the baby, I feel like they can make something very chilling out of this gameplay sequence. Up next, it states that
Okay, about the baby in Resident Evil Village, I have to tell you something. I haven't played Resident Evil 7 and 8 yet, because I hate first-person games. I think it's time to just purchase the games and play them. Come on, why aren't they third-person shooters? Resident Evil is known for being a third-person shooter. I mean, at least they could give us two options to choose between first person or third person shooter. Giving it only one option and making it first person after all of those third person Resident Evils doesn't make sense to me. But maybe I just play Resident Evil 7 and 8 in the future soon and stream them on my Twitch account or here on YouTube.
The leaker then mentions that the Novistadors have been completely cut and the huge Salazar statue remains in the game, but in the remake,
what? The huge statue is gonna remain in the game? I thought this is gonna be one of the parts they're gonna skip, because this part of the game doesn't make any sense to me. It's not, I mean, can you imagine a statue like this in reality? How? But they removed Novistadors? Okay, let's just, I hope they're just rumors.
it's not a statue. That was the full list of changes on this document, so now let's jump into the new details, enemies, and bosses. First up, it states that in the dungeon within the castle, Leon must find a key to unlock the only exit door. The dungeon is pitch black, so the player must rely on the flashlight to look for clues while trying to avoid a new stalker enemy with a long hook. They don't mention it in this document, but these leakers are definitely referring to the Hookman from Resident Evil 3.5. Shining the flashlight at the stalker will cause it to cry and bend down, giving the player a chance to evade. So this does sound very good, but I feel like this segment will be better fitting for Ashley since it sounds like he won't be doing much shooting. Regardless, I definitely like to hear that the Hookman is returning. Next up, it states that
Okay, having Hookman in the game sounds really interesting to me, because I mean, I've seen fan criticizing that Hookman shouldn't have a return and blah blah blah, and they have their own opinions and I really respect that, but having Hookman back, I think it's both iconic and new. I mean, exciting. It's gonna be a new experience, and this is something that we never had the chance to have back in 2005, because after the game came out, a few years later, people came out and said, we don't want Resident Evil 4 the way it is. We wish Hookman was in it. It's not horror anymore, it's action. Now Capcom is giving us the horror version of Resident Evil 4, which we asked for in the past few years, which is interesting to me. So having him back is just something that I'm really here for it. I really accept it. It's interesting. Bring him back to me.
Luis will be a boss fight in the game. He will help and is returning. Next up, it states that Luis will be a boss fight in the game. He will help Leon and Ashley up until the infection takes over and he mutates uncontrollably. So we have gotten a similar...
Luis is gonna be a boss fight in the game? We have to kill Luis, so it's not Salvador who kills him? Oh my god, I think this is gonna be even more sad than what it was in the main game. So he helps us to survive, but he can't survive himself? Okay.
Leon and Ashley up until the infection takes over and he mutates uncontrollably. So we have gotten a similar leak to this before, and if I'm gonna be honest, I really don't like the sound of it. It just doesn't seem fitting for Luis's character at all. Next up, it states that when you're...
You know what, I was hoping that in the remake of the game, Luis can escape in some way, but this time is even this rumor or leak is even more sad for me. Okay, I hope it's just a rumor and not real.
If you are playing as Ashley, you will be equipped with a handgun, but a few gameplay mechanics will be different. One of them being her aim will be very shaky and hard to control. Also, the aim will not include a reticle. From there, it states that Dr. Salvador will dual wield a pair of chainsaws. Next, they say that Salazar will have a huge pet spider that will include a boss battle where you can either kill it or escape. Then it goes on to say that the laser room will make a return, but it won't be over the top like the original and take a much more serious approach. And lastly, the leaker mentions that Wesker will make an appearance in a helicopter. It doesn't state anything further than that, but I personally feel like this could lead to a boss fight against Wesker, but we will have to wait and see. Make sure to check out
A boss fight against Wesker? And I really liked the idea of giving Ashley a handgun, but the shooting mechanism is not the same as Leon and her hands shaky. So I'm so hyped for this game right now. Wow. Okay, so this was the first video, and it was by Evil Blitz, which I'm gonna put the link to this video in the description if you wanna see the original. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one says RE4 Remake leak has fans angry. Has fans angry? Why? Let's watch to find out.
That has really been making fans really upset, and that is the potential rumor of Krauser being cut from the remake. Now, Krauser is a beloved character by a lot of fans, but today I want to talk about why I don't think Krauser needs to necessarily be in the remake. Yes, I do think he is an important character.
Wait, what? Krauser being cut from the game? How? That doesn't make any sense to me, because Krauser is the one who brought Ashley to this village. When I was first playing Resident Evil 4, I was like, the daughter of the President of the United States has been spotted in Spain. How's that even possible? I mean, who kidnapped her from the US to Spain? If the daughter of the President of the United States is not safe and can easily be kidnapped, then who is? Then nobody's safe in this world. But then I got to this boss fight of the Resident Evil 4 and I found out that it was Krauser who kidnapped her, and everything made sense to me in that point of the game. But right now in the remake, if they're gonna remove Krauser, I mean, I kinda accept and I kinda agree the fact that the Krauser boss fight in this game is not horror at all and it's just action based. But removing him from the game, man, that doesn't sound good to me. It really made me angry. Yeah, that title is true. It really made me angry. So let's just watch the rest.
So people have posed the question, if Krauser isn't in the remake, then who is going to be the character
who's gonna
that ends
take
up
Ashley?
kidnapping Ashley? And if you ask me, I think literally any other character can be the one that kidnaps Ashley. It doesn't need to be Krauser. Now, the only reason why this wouldn't make sense is because Krauser dies in the original game. And one thing that Capcom is trying to do with these remakes is they're not changing the canon, they're just changing how things are done. For example, you remember Brad in RE3? In the original, he dies, but he dies to Nemesis. And in the remake, his canon isn't changed. Brad still dies, but this time he is bitten and turns into a zombie, but he still dies. So I feel like in the remake, I do think Krauser is going to be in the game. I do think the leaks about him not being in the remake are not true. And Krauser mostly shows up during the island section of the game. So that poses the next question. How do we fix the island section of the game in the remake. Resident Evil 4 is a horror game with action elements, but I feel like once you get to the island section, the game just completely ramps up the action, and that is partially thanks to Krauser. So if Capcom is trying to remake one of the greatest video games of all time, and they're trying to take it in a more serious and more horror direction, I simply just cannot see Krauser fitting into the game, especially with the leaks that the game is going to have a ton of new enemies and more boss fights. I just feel like Krauser is just going to make the game way too bloated. But those are my opinions, and now I want to hear yours. Anyway, like and subscribe, and peace out, y'all.
Alright, so Krauser being cut from the game just because his section was action-based and not horror-based, that's a shock. That's a big shock to me. But I like the idea of bringing him back, but don't give him the boss fight. No. If you think that the Krauser section of the game is so action and you want to make Resident Evil 4 Remake a horror game, you can just change his boss fight. Change it in a way that it's more horror than action. But don't cut him from the game. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. And this is interesting because whenever there's a leak out from a game, half of the fans will say we want this leak to be true, and half the fans say we don't want it to be true. And I think Capcom is also confused because some of the fans say we don't want Krauser in the game, and some of the fans say we want him in the game. Whatever Capcom do, they're just gonna satisfy half the fans of the game. So let's just enjoy the game in the first place. Let's just enjoy the game even if it's not the way you expected it to be. And the second thing I want to mention is Resident Evil 4 Remake is now in the right hands. Because back in, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, when the rumors came out that Capcom is working on Resident Evil 4 Remake before they actually confirm it, there was a rumor that M2 is in charge of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which scared the shit out of me, because M2 is the team that screwed Resident Evil 3 Remake. I just don't want to talk about Resident Evil 3 Remake, but they just cut so many important parts of the game, and they actually didn't do anything. Resident Evil 3 Remake was kinda a DLC for 2 Remake. They used the same locations that they were in Resident Evil 2 Remake. The inventory management was exactly the same mechanism that they copied from Resident Evil 2 Remake. The AI of Nemesis was bullshit. I hated that. He wasn't scary anymore to me. Mr. X was so scary to me in Resident Evil 2 Remake, but Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 Remake was just an undying zombie to me. Seriously. And I think M2 was in charge of that. But a few months after that, the news came out that Capcom Dev1 team is now in charge of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which gave me peace. And I was like, okay, now the game is in the right hands. And you know what's interesting? The producer of Resident Evil 2 Remake, I forgot his name, let me just search him up. Hirabayashi. He's one of the producers of Resident Evil 2 Remake and one of the members of Capcom Dev1 team. And it's interesting for you to know that he was also one of the members of Capcom team in the production of Resident Evil 4 Original. Yoshiaki Hirabayashi, which is interesting because they're using some of the same members that they worked on the original, so they know about the cut content, the behind the scenes stories about the characters and everything, and now they're back to do the exact same thing but improve it in better ways, which is, I think it just gives me peace. And I'm not worried about that anymore. So if they cut Krauser, even if they cut Krauser, I know that they cut it for a good reason. And I know that they will bring something more interesting back in the game instead of him. So let's just chill. and don't get angry even if they're gonna cut some content. We know that it's gonna be necessary, and these are just decisions that they have to make. I know that they're dealing with so many things making the game, so let's just not put the pressure on them. Let them do what they do best, like Resident Evil 2 Remake, which was one of the best Resident Evil games I've ever played. Back to the next video. These new Resident Evil 4 Remake leaks may surprise you. Wait, didn't I just watch that? Okay, no, I haven't watched this.
In this video, I will be breaking down these said leaks and giving my personal thoughts about them. Make sure to subscribe for more Resident Evil content like this. And with that being said, let's get right into it. I know a lot of people don't want to see the Hookman in the remake because the game would take a supernatural approach, but I personally think it would be such a missed opportunity if Capcom didn't have him appear. The next leak states that...
Okay, that kind of makes sense to me because, for example, when you work on a game, you have to decide what's in the game and what's not in the game. So you have, for example, 10 candidates for your enemies, and you have to choose only 7 of them, and you have to skip the 3 of them. And after a few years, you still think about it, and you say, "Oh, why did I skip those 3 enemies? They were interesting ideas. I had to keep them in the game." And they are like concept arts that you can't use them in other games. For example, if a boss or enemy was skipped from Resident Evil 4, sometimes you can't just use it in Resident Evil 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. You have to use it only in 4. And now this remake of Resident Evil 4 is giving Capcom the chance to use the enemies and cut content that they just ignored making the main game. And now in the remake, they just want to bring them back, which is interesting to me, and I'm really down for it. I just really want to see the Hookman and some of the Garradors and boss fights that they just skipped from the original, and now they're here and we have the chance to see them.
I think it would be such a missed opportunity if Capcom didn't have him appear. The next leak states that Krauser will be in the remake and his character will be fleshed out more. Now this is actually very interesting because as we know, there was previous leaks that were stating that Krauser would be cut from the remake. Some people may disagree, but I feel like Krauser has to be in the remake because of his significant role he played in the original. And next up, it states that the remake will have 8 new enemies, with one of them being giant spiders. Personally, I really don't find giant spiders being fitting at all for this game, but if they are going to be added, then I could see them appearing during the sewer section of the game in the castle. Now 8 new enemies does seem like a lot, but you gotta keep in mind the many scrapped enemy designs that never made it into the game. There were scrapped Garrador designs, scrapped Regenerator designs, scrapped Garrador designs, and many other unique enemy designs that never made it into the game. There was also that leak that stated that there would be a Jester enemy that chases you with a spear in the sewers, and you also can't forget about the Hookman. So yes, 8 new enemies does sound like a lot, but with that said, there are plenty of potential concepts that can fill these numbers. Moving on, the leaker states that Dr. Salvador will be much taller and act as a stalker type enemy in the game. So when they say taller, I feel like they're most likely talking about the Waterworld design for the chainsaw enemy. He was much bigger overall and a lot more aggressive, which would be a perfect fit for a stalker type enemy in my opinion. Now I'm totally okay with them adding a stalker role, but Capcom has to take a different approach with this role. The past 4 RE games have pretty much been a copy and paste with their stalker enemies, so the whole stalker concept is really starting to get old. They need to try something new with this role and make the said stalker as terrifying as possible. Now going back to Dr. Salvador, the leaker also states that Dr. Salvador will show up to the iconic cabin fight and act as a boss encounter. This actually sounds really cool, especially since Luis would most likely fight alongside you. The next leak states that you can switch between first and third person. The kick actions will return, and the game will feature new locations. If they do add new locations...
What? Can you switch between first person and third person? A few minutes ago, I was talking about why didn't they put that option in Resident Evil 7 and 8? So they give you the chance to change between first person and third person. Oh my god. I thought this is something that can't be done, but now that they're doing it for Resident Evil 4, maybe they can just release a DLC for Resident Evil 7 and 8 that you can play as a third person. That's interesting.
The kick actions will return, and the game will feature new locations. If they do add new locations, I think it would be pretty cool if they added the blimp area from Resident Evil 3.5
Exactly.
as a nice callback to the original. As for the camera switch, I feel like this is very likely because as we know, RE8 is getting its own third-person mode while also featuring first-person. Next up, the
Wow, that's interesting. Finally, I can play RE8 Village if it's gonna have a third-person mod. Wow.
leaker states that the Bella sisters will be cut from the game. I'm not gonna lie, this would be a little bit of a bummer if true, but if Capcom plans on cutting anything from the game, hopefully it is replaced with something much better. Now this next leak is pretty big, as they state that Albert Wesker will be a boss in the game. As we know, Wesker never came into contact with Leon in the game, since he only appeared when calling Ada. So with him having his own boss fight, hopefully that means he will play a much bigger role in the story. The next
Alright, so my first thoughts as about Wesker coming to the game is, first of all, it doesn't make any sense to me. Because even if Wesker appear in the village, the castle, or the island, he's gonna be there to fight Sadler and get back the sample, not to fight Leon. And if he appear in the game, the whole idea of sending Ada and Krauser to get the sample is in vain. I mean, if you want to go there, then why do you send Ada and Krauser? You go yourself. And if you send those two, why do you want to go yourself? First of all, it doesn't make any sense to me because Wesker is a Resident Evil 5 boss fight. I know that game screwed so much, but trying to put everything in this Resident Evil 4 remake, I think they're gonna end up like Resident Evil 6. Because Resident Evil 6 wanted to put everything in the game. Action, horror, all the characters we know, all in one game. And did you saw what happened? It didn't come out as they expected it to be. And they just ruined the game because they wanted to put everything in just one game. And Krauser making an appearance in Resident Evil 4 Remake sounds something like that to me.
The leaker then states that side characters will have their own mini-story DLC. This is also much needed, especially for Luis, but I think it would also be pretty interesting to give Krauser his own mini-story and show his perspective throughout the game. But anyways guys, those were all of the brand new leaks regarding the RE4.
Alright, about giving each side character their own story sounds really amazing to me. I don't know about you, but to me that sounds amazing, because after all these years, after 17 years, we still want to know some secrets about the game. When I played the game, I was like, why there is no child in the village? And then in the credit scene, after you just finish the game, they showed that the kids also were in the village, but their bodies couldn't handle the plug-on, so they died. And that was a very amazing callback. I saw that out and I was like, wow, look at all these details they're putting even in the credit scene. And for all these years, I was thinking about Luis, about Krauser. Every other character needed their own stories. And it seems we're gonna get that, and that's amazing. That's exciting for me. I'm so hyped up now. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think the next one is gonna be the last one, and then I'll check the 3 others in a separate video, which is gonna come out later.
Alright, so I just woke up, so please bear with me. I was scrolling on Twitter and I found these set of leaks that I talked about a while back. And I noticed something pretty crazy that really caught my eye. So now I'm here, I decided to click record because I need to talk about this. So one of the bullet points on here says that Ashley has a new design with college student vibes, and her classic costume is a bonus. Now if we look in the trailer, well, I don't know about you guys, but it looks like Ashley is wearing a college student outfit. outfit. When I used to go to in-person college, there were people walking around with outfits that looked very similar to the one that Ashley is wearing right here. It says 3 bosses were cut from the game, and one of them is a QuickTime event, which my theory is that the QuickTime event boss fight is going to end up being the Del Lago boss fight, the village being a lot more tight, Krauser's been reworked, and then apparently the final boss isn't Spider Sadler anymore. And it even says that Lewis has more plot relevance, and that his character looks slightly different. And if you look at the trailer, his outfit does look a little bit different. So yeah, some of these leaks are too specific. Are there any leaks out there that you guys believe, or maybe you don't believe? But thank you all so much for watching this video.
And thank you so much for watching this video. I'll check the 3 other ones after I take a short break, and I'll post them in a separate video if you want to check that and see my review on them and on Rumors and on Resident Evil 4 Remake. Make sure to check that video as well. So have a good day and see you around.